December 2016. A video is widely shared by Burundian social media accounts. It shows red liquid flowing from the gutter of a private property. Those who posted it speculated that the liquid might be blood. Some asked if the house was being used by Burundi's feared intelligence services. The government immediately denied that this house, or any other, had ever been used as a torture facility. BBC Africa Eye has been looking closely at this house and asking some critical questions. Who lived here? Did people die here? And is the Burundian government running secret torture facilities to silence dissent?
The reason why we're here is to protest this third mandate of the president.
The streets of the capital, Bujumbura, in 2015. Burundi is a tiny country in the Great Lakes region of Africa. It shot into the headlines when President Pierre Nkurunsiza decided to run for a third term in office. People took to the streets, claiming he was violating the constitution. Peaceful protests soon turned violent. Hundreds were killed. These images were filmed when the BBC could still report freely on Burundi's troubles. But there was a brutal crackdown on local independent media. Foreign journalists were denied visas, and special instructions were left at a border post refusing entry to a BBC team. Faced with these restrictions, BBC Africa Eye decided to examine some of the social media images that have been trickling out of Burundi in recent years. The government likes to portray Burundi as a country now at peace. But these clips tell a different story. In this video, members of the Imbonerakure, the ruling party's youth wing, chant songs about rape. Here, supporters sing about burning opponents. Other posts show dead bodies floating in lakes and rivers. The video of the red liquid was among the most disturbing, and it contained some information that allowed us to investigate further. It was posted on social media with an address, 76 Avenue Ntwarante. It's here in Kinindo, a quiet residential neighborhood of Bujumbura. In April this year, we found the house's owner, Prosper Kaze. He's an active member of the opposition who no longer lives in Burundi, and he recognized his property in the video.
It's a place where I grew up, so I can't mistake it. You see, I'm not good at drawing, but I guess from memory, this is the sitting room. Yeah.
With Prosper's guidance and family photos, forensic architecture, who specialize in the precise reconstruction of witness testimony, built this virtual model of the house. It's the house Prosper grew up in, and to which he took his own children to spend time with their grandparents. His family left the country and abandoned the property in 2015, at the height of the protests. In November of that year, pictures showing what looked like the same house being raided by security forces emerged on social media. A journalist was also at the scene and gave us these images. They mapped perfectly onto the model. The security forces said they were reclaiming the property from rebels. Prosper's house was now in the hands of Burundi's authorities. But what did they do with it? And why, 1 year later, was red liquid flowing from its gutter? After months of searching, we tracked down a man who claimed to know the property and what happened here. We'll call him Nathan. He drew a sketch of it for us, which proved that he really was familiar with the layout of Prosper's house. Nathan says he worked as a guard for a man called Alexis Ndaye, known as Nkoroka. This is Nkoroka. He is the deputy head of interior security for Burundi's intelligence service and is accused by local human rights activists of running secret detention centers across the country.
Normally, Nkoroka doesn't kill, but he orders. He tells you, work. You do what he orders you to do.
Okay. The door is here?
The door is there, leading to that room.
We took forensic architecture to meet Nathan. Using the model to walk through the house, Nathan gave a detailed account of what he had witnessed in each room.
How many people were in the house?
I don't remember the exact number, but in the detainees' room and in the other room, there were around 20 people. Nkoroka was the one in charge of the house, so sometimes he would get them out to interrogate them and beat them up in their living room. The detainees were made to lie down, and the chairs were on the other side. I can't tell if they were beaten one by one. All I know is that they were screaming.
We managed to find one of the men who entered that living room and faced Nkoroka's interrogation. We'll call him Pierre. Pierre was accused of involvement in the protests. He was tortured, but later escaped and fled the country.
When I was inside, I was like someone who was already dead. I did not think I would ever get out. Now that I am far away, I am starting to forget. But what keeps coming back to me are the screams that I heard over there.
Pierre's is the most detailed and shocking account of how Nkoroka allegedly dealt with those suspected of opposing the government.
If they wanted to question someone, they would call him and they would approach the chief and kneel before him. So we would be in line somewhere here and they would call us one by one. Each case was different. But if they were not satisfied with your answer, they would torture you. You would hand them your hands and they would beat them with electric cables. Also, they would cane you under their feet while kneeling. I recall one of the cables that had many wires inside with a black rubber cover. That was the one the chief used to walk around with. A black rubber cable enclosing many wires that he would beat you up with if he was not satisfied with your answer.
In December 2016, Pierre heard something worse than the regular beatings. 2 people, he said, tried to escape from the house, and the guards chased after them.
So we could hear people shouting and saying, "Get those dogs, don't let them escape, or you will suffer consequences." When they finally caught them, I could hear them screaming in a way that suggested that they were being killed or being inflicted excruciating pain. They did not come back in the house after, and given the words I could hear, I think they were killed.
It was not just the screaming that made Pierre think the detainees had been killed. He also says he heard the chief, Nkurunsiza, talking about body bags.
Then that day he said, "Bring sacks and stuff in those dogs and load them in the car." That is why I think people were killed there before, because those bags were used to carry corpses.
Pierre didn't see any of this. He was locked in a room, listening to the terrifying sound of men screaming outside. But at around the same time, just before the video of the red liquid began to circulate, our guard, Nathan, saw a killing with his own eyes. His account contains striking similarities to Pierre's testimony. He describes 3 men being brought into the house. They were tall, one of them especially big.
Let me tell you the truth, the whole truth. During the time of that blood, they had brought 3 men and had put them in that room over there. The next night, an intelligence agent came and took them out of their detention room to the living room. That was Nkurunsiza. He ordered his guard to behead them. At that point, one of the guys, who was a tough man, tried to forge ahead and escape.
According to Nathan, the escapee was caught and killed just inside the main gate. He says the guards carried the body back into the living room, where the other 2 prisoners had already been beheaded with knives.
Then they brought sacks to stuff their corpse in. We tied the sacks. Then we took a new tent and laid it in the cargo area of the car, loaded the corpses in the car, and covered them with a tent, and they drove off.
Nathan says the bodies were carried away in sacks. But the blood of the 3 men remained on the floor and the driveway and had to be cleaned up.
If that blood was coming from the house, it was from the kids' bathroom.
Prosper, who built the sewage system for this house, says that if it had been poured into this bathroom drain, it would have flowed into this gutter, the same gutter seen in the video posted on December 28th. It is impossible to be 100% sure that this liquid is the blood of the 3 men Nathan described. But Nathan did confirm that Pierre, the prisoner who says he heard men being killed, was also held captive at 76 Avenue, Mburahati, at the time of the alleged killings. We've been looking at this house in Burundi's capital, Bujumbura, and asking if it was used as a torture facility by the government. But what does it tell us about the bigger picture? To understand the origins of the current violence, we need to go back in time. Between 1993 and the early 2000s, there was a civil war in Burundi. The conflict pitted the Tutsi minority, who had held power for many years, against the Hutu majority. The war ended when Nelson Mandela brokered a peace deal, laying out the terms for a power-sharing agreement.
President Buyoya has had the courage and the vision. He has agreed that the new army should be created from 50% of the Hutus and 50% of the Tutsis.
The agreement also said that no president could hold power for more than 2 terms. It laid the foundations for a decade of peace and stability. But when Pierre Nkurunsiza decided to run again, many said he was violating the peace deal, a charge the president has always denied. Thousands, both Hutu and Tutsi, took to the streets, and in response, the regime mobilized its security apparatus to suppress dissent. Today, some believe that those in charge are trying to turn the 2 ethnic groups against each other to deflect attention away from Nkurunziza's attempts to stay in power. We found a low-ranking intelligence agent who worked with the government until he fled the country in 2016. He admitted to killing people during the time of the protests and said that the crackdown was directed at areas heavily populated by Tutsis.
Not many Tutsis worked with us. We were almost all Hutus, and those we killed came from neighborhoods where there were very few Hutus. Before ordering us to kill, they told us, Tutsis do not want us to rule. But later on we came to realize that they had lied to us.
According to the former insiders we spoke with, the crackdown of 2015 has now turned into a quiet, orchestrated program to eliminate opposition. Prosper's house is not the only site that has reportedly been used as a secret detention center for political prisoners. At least 21 other torture locations have been reported by victims and intelligence agents to the UN, to the civil society organization Dondeza, and to the BBC in these areas of the country. Of these 21, we have been able to locate 8 sites in the capital with precision, including Muha Military Camp, the National Intelligence Agency headquarters, the basement of the ruling party headquarters, containers in the yard of the National Water and Electricity Providers building in Kigobe, and the headquarters of the police unit in charge of protecting the country's institutions. This is where former President Melchior Ndadaye was buried. There has been a police presence next to his tomb for years, but between September and November 2015, a new structure appeared, and our sources say it became a base for an anti-riot brigade. The troops are visible here. They were deployed to suppress the protests in 2015 and were accused of using the containers in the yard as detention and torture sites. A victim told us that he was interrogated in this pink house in the suburb of Mutakura in 2016. It's a former bakery, abandoned by its owner during the protests. The victim told the BBC that liquid was injected into his stomach. A former intelligence agent told the BBC that he saw people being killed in a bar called Iwabo Wabantu. It belonged to the now deceased head of intelligence, Adolf Nshimirimana. Our source told us the killers would blast loud music to cover the screams. Local human rights groups confirm that political violence is still happening. We've analyzed the reports coming out of Burundi. They indicate that although fewer deaths are reported, more and more people are going missing or being tortured, and that these incidents are now spread right across the country. We put the allegations contained in this film to the Burundian authorities and to Alexis Ndayikengurukiye Nkuroka directly. We have not received any formal response. President Pierre Nkurunsiza and his government have always denied involvement in human rights violations. But several of the sources we spoke to, including former government insiders, believe that this alleged program of detention and torture has been approved at the highest levels.
This was organized in closed circles. This is a secret that was known by very high-ranking officials. What I'm telling you, the president knew because he was given reports.
We put these allegations to the president's office. We received no response. The protests of 2015 have disappeared from the streets of Bujumbura, as have the journalists who covered them. But it would be a mistake, says one former intelligence agent, to think that Burundi is now at peace.
Some people think that the country is safe now. I want to tell you this. This small respite is for them the best time to carry out the killings without anyone noticing it.
This is a man we will call Martin. He worked for the regime and fled the country in 2018 because he feared for his life.
Let me repeat this. They have long list of people to be killed. They have list of army elements, police officers and civil servants who are to be killed because they are believed to be dissident or people who are believed not to support the ruling party enough. They have changed their operating mode, the cars, the body bags, the tents, the agents that they use in their new system. At the moment, the country is silent, but people continue to die and there will be no one left.
By asking questions about what happened in this house, we have found disturbing evidence that Burundi's government is still eliminating opposition to its rule. Multiple witnesses have told us about a hidden but systematic program of torture and killing. Local dissidents have a name for this. They call it kame kame, one by one.